بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful.
Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. Today I have another reaction video. In this reaction video, I'm going to be reacting to, and the video title says, My Reverted Story Part 1. I'll try to find Part 2, and this is coming from Brother Chris. And let's get to the video and see the story of the brother and how he discovered Islam and ended up becoming a Muslim. Let's get to it.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Chris, and when I had my nikah, my about-to-be mother-in-law told me, if anyone asks you about your convert story, just tell them it took me a lifetime to get here and it will take me a lifetime to tell you. I won't keep you here for a lifetime, but my story is quite a long one. I've got friends who read a small part of the Quran or maybe visited a mosque and very quickly converted, and mine was really the opposite type of journey to that. I took a long time. I guess I was a nominal Christian. Certainly I grew up going to church with my parents, and my grandparents were very involved in the church, and my great-grandfather was actually a vicar. I never met him, sadly. I'm sure he and I would have had some interesting conversations. There are also a number of Quakers in my family as well. But for me, I guess I was a nominal Christian as a child, and then in teenage onwards became a kind of atheist by default. Atheism was what was around. I don't think it was a very thought through atheism, and it wasn't a very robust atheism, because if I was on a plane and we were going through turbulence, suddenly I became pretty religious. Then we landed safely, forgot all about it. So that was the kind of atheist that I was.
Okay.
But I was interested in politics, I was interested in culture. I read a lot. Back then I also was really into music, but I never really looked into religion in any great depth. And so when I was at Birmingham Polytechnic, I have a very strong memory of going to wash my hands before lunch, and there's a guy with his foot in the sink, and he's got two pieces of paper towel on the ground, and he's kind of switching between them with a ballet dancer's precision. And if you had asked me at that time, what's this guy doing, I probably would have told you he's got some kind of foot problem, some kind of skin issue that he needs frequent washing. That is how naive I was. And I would then, having washed my hands, walk to the canteen, and I would go past the lecture room that we had just been in. Now the chairs that we were sitting at and the desks we were sitting at all cleared, and there's perhaps 2 or 3 dozen prayer mats. I didn't know they were prayer mats. I saw these as just rugs, and I noticed how they weren't all pointing to the front in the same way, or they weren't all facing the front in the same way that the desks previously were. They were kind of at a diagonal angle. And again, if you said to me, what are those there for, I wouldn't have had a clue. I probably would have thought yoga or something, or I might have just picked a random religion off the top of my head. So it was a mixture of, I think, naivety and also just lack of interest, lack of inquisitiveness, which was strange given how engaged I was in every other aspect of life. I had a friend who had traveled a lot. I hadn't, never really had a huge desire to travel, but he wanted to go to Iran, and a couple of years after I graduated, we went to Iran. We went to, I think the consulate was in Kensington in London, and I remember going in there, very naively just asking for 2 visas for Iran, please, and the woman just kind of smiling at us and shaking her head. We left without our visas, but then we met somebody kind of lurking outside, this person with an Australian accent, telling us that for £100 each they could get us a visa. So anyway, we handed over our passports and £100 to this complete stranger, and amazingly the visas came back and off we went. I remember the first night in our hotel room, looking up at the ceiling, and there was a red arrow on the ceiling pointing, and I looked at the direction it was pointing in, opened the curtains, and I was looking over these rooftops thinking, what is this pointing at? And again, we're back to the guy, washing his feet in the sink, or the mats all laid out in the lecture room, just not piecing things together and not being motivated to piece these things together. Yes, this was the pre-internet era, but there were still libraries, there were still places to go to get information. Yet when it came to politics, I was reading as much as I could, but with religion, not really. And I think I fell into the mistaken belief that Islam was a political ideology of some kind, and not to say it doesn't have a very strong political component, but I didn't understand that there was also a spiritual part of it as well, a very strong spiritual part of it. So I then started doing a lot more traveling, and having gone to Iran, I thought, well, maybe I'll go to the other end of the region. So I went to Lebanon, and I knocked off a quick TEFL English language teaching course in London before I went. I went out there, lived in Beirut for a year, and taught English whilst doing writing on the side. I was starting to do more journalism at that point, mostly writing about bits of pop culture that I would find wherever I went. That was a big interest of mine, and I would just go to bookshops and music shops and just hoover up whatever I could find wherever I was. And again, in Lebanon, I noticed qualities in people which I really admired, which I really wish I had. Didn't really connect them to Islam though at the time, just saw them as individual traits that a person might have, one of which being kind of an acceptance of a situation, particularly if that situation was one that was out of your control, whereas my response to that was just frustration or anger. My travels kind of ended after a few years when I was in Morocco, and I was in a small apartment in Rabat, and the TV that I had on the wall was a tiny little studio apartment, and there were no channels. It just was like white noise just going all the time, except at about 8 p.m. every evening a Muslim scholar would appear on a TV show, sitting behind his desk, answering questions from people calling in. And as it was the only thing on, I just watched it, and I just thought, wow, this is the most boring thing I have ever seen in my life, because to my mind, people were calling in with these unbelievably mundane questions, and he was answering them. But the next night, what was I doing? I was watching it again. And the next night, I was watching it again. After about 3 or 4 nights, I was down on the street in a cafe buying dinner, which I was going to eat in the cafe. Looked at the time and thought, oh, the scholar's about to be on. So I packed up my food to take out, fast walked back to my little flat and put it on. And I think what struck me was, because I had just thought that Islam was really just this political ideology, that people were calling in with these questions about mundane day-to-day aspects of life, but ones which you can kind of infuse with spirituality or with meaning. And what I liked was, when people called in and asked him a question, he didn't just give an opinion, he didn't just start talking. He was quite measured, and when he would speak, he would speak the footnotes out loud, he would quote his sources. There was a kind of rigor and a meticulousness to how he approached things. And he might say, well, there's a majority opinion that believes this, there's a minority opinion that believes that. He would quote people who I'd never heard of. Even his greeting at the beginning of the show, I couldn't catch. I caught salam, and then but he spoke so quickly, I just couldn't catch the rest of it. So it was definitely something that intrigued me, even if I missed a fair amount of it. And even sometimes he would quote a source, and the source would come up in text on the bottom of the screen, and I would look at that and I would think, why is it saying Muslim? Why is the source Muslim? What would it be, some other religion? I didn't realize that was actually a person. It definitely had an effect on me. But what happened at the end when I left and came back to the UK was what always seemed to happen whenever I would get interested in Islam, whenever I would sort of feel like I was getting closer to it, which was that just like the sort of white noise on the TV before he would be on every evening, as soon as my plane landed back in the UK, my own life would return to white noise. That's how Islam was for many years. There were these periods of interest where maybe I would read something or I would talk to somebody, never in great depth, but certainly I was edging perhaps a bit closer, and then I would get distracted by something else. Not distracted for a day or two, distracted for a year or two. I never really thought about conversion because I didn't know anyone who had converted. In fact, the idea, I think, of a religious conversion to me seemed just unimaginable. It would be like saying, oh, I'm going to just change my DNA this afternoon. Because I tied religion to a bit like eye color. It's just something that it just is. All of these strange, incorrect thoughts, but nevertheless, that was, what I had at my disposal. And I either didn't have the motivation or interest to research it more deeply. So yeah, the idea of a convert was just not something that was kind of on my radar. Over time, that would change, but I was focused on career, and I had wanted to be a writer since I was really a teenager, and that is what I wanted to pursue. So I'll end this video at this point, but in the next one I will talk about what it was like to go to LA to try and break into Hollywood, and weirdly what it was like to finally walk into a mosque, one in, of all places, Southern California, and that being the point where things for me really started to change. So thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you on the next one.
Yeah, brothers and sisters, the video is ended. The brother Chris explained very good how he felt about Islam and how long it took him to become a Muslim. Yes, some reverts, they research deeply and find out if they really want to convert, and they have to see something that convinces them to become a Muslim. And some of them, they just like quickly become a Muslim and they will not be a good Muslim. Yeah, because if you don't know and you convert or revert to Islam, and then you will not be able even to learn it through because you haven't learned it. So that's the thing. People take their time to come to Islam. Those who take their time to become a Muslim are more knowledgeable than those who quickly become a Muslim. It's always a good option to take your time, learn, and then let me see it if you like it, because something convincing you, something is really good to you, and then that way you can make a decision. Yeah. If you are here all the way to the end of the video, please subscribe to the channel, like, comment. That will help me with the YouTube algorithm, and let me know what you think. If you have a video to react to, please share it with me and I will get to it. And thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.